Welcome to the Career Refresh Podcast. I'm your host, Jill Griffin. I'm a former media and marketing executive turned career strategist and executive coach. I spent my career working my way up and through the ranks of global organizations and startups, and today I show others how to do the same. Join me each week as we discuss the strategies and actionable steps to leverage your strengths, increase your confidence, and develop your career well-being. Ready? Let's do it. Hi there. Welcome back to the Career Refresh Podcast. I'm your host, Jill Griffin. This week, I am introducing you to my friend and former colleague, Heather Keets Wright. Heather is the co-founder and CEO of the Wright Creative Agency. She is a creative thought leader in the agency and branded content space. And Heather has had a long history of working and leading work for large, complex clients. In 2015, she co-founded Wright Creative with her husband, documentary filmmaker Mark W. Wright. Wright Creative's clients include TIAA, Sunbelt Rentals, Train, Parkdale, and Kellogg. In 2020, she was the winner of the Women in Content Marketing Award for General Excellence. Heather is a graduate of Syracuse University, and she and Wright Creative blend journalism, brand storytelling, and they bring diversity of thought, voices, and storytelling to content where previously there hasn't been any. Heather is a journalist by trade, and she started her career at Time Inc.'s Entertainment Weekly magazine before serving in various editorial roles at 17, TeamPeople.com, and where I had the pleasure of meeting Heather at Martha Stewart. In addition to running the agency, Heather recently served as supervising producer for Milestone Generations, an HBO documentary about the first and only Black superhero universe. Upcoming documentaries from Wright Creative that you want to be on the lookout for are The Bison Project and Can't Retire From This. My friends, this episode, we talk about everything. We talk about the challenges of being a Black woman in media, how supplier diversity in advertising and marketing has shaped the way she approaches partnerships today. And we also talk about the lessons learned from being a certified Black and women-owned business. Dig in. Heather is a force and an inspiration, and I know you are going to enjoy this episode. I did. I'll put all of Heather's information on how to follow her work in the show notes. And as always, if you have any questions, email us at hello@jillgriffincoaching.com. Ready? Let's do it. Hey, Heather.
Hi, Jill.
How
are you?
I'm great. I've been looking forward to this. We had been talking about doing this together for a while, so the day is finally here. So I'm really excited to jump in and let everyone know all about what you have created and your enormous success.
Let's do it.
I know. All right. So I always like to go back to the early years and start with, like, when you were a kid, what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
I love this question. I get to reveal how ridiculously nerdy I am. I promise you, I started making magazines when I was like 6 or 7 years old out of notebook paper. Yeah, I'm that person. And I would make magazines and write articles in them and draw the pictures for the photographs, staple them together, and then sell them to my family for $1.
Oh, I mean,
I know you're speechless.
I'm like, there's where the editor came in. There's where the creativity came in. There's where the business, maker came in. Amazing. Yep. So were there certain topics that you focused on for the magazines or just whatever?
I think the early years I was writing about my dolls and stuff like that. Like, all the happenings in my room from day to day. Like, here's a weekly digest of everything that happened upstairs. And I don't know, crazy stuff like that. As I got older, I wrote a lot of poetry. I would write short stories. And I'm thinking about my sister listening to this and laughing because she would be like, you are such a dork. What is wrong with you? But I just loved it. And I think my grandmother lived with us, grew up living with my grandmothers always. And my grandmother was a big magazine reader, catalogs, magazine. I remember when the September Vogue would come and it was like, shut it down, holiday. We're going to get call my grandmother Eni. We're going to get in Eni's bed and we are going to read September Vogue cover to cover. She had Oreo cookies. We would dog ear the pages. She would be like, you should get this. I would be like, no, you should get these. These shoes are the best. And we'd go through all 900 pages. I don't know if anyone remembers those days.
Yeah, I remember the fun factor of those.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's where my love of magazines developed. So what did I want to be when I grew up? I wanted to be whatever the person did that put together magazines. That's what I wanted to be.
It's amazing. And, for our listeners, we're going to go through your story, but they're also going to hear how that dream came true, which is really amazing to have that foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So take us through your career journey. I mean, you have worked at top companies, especially within the publishing space. Mm-hmm. You have worked at Time Inc., Entertainment Weekly, which for me was always a must-read. And then you served in various editorial roles, both at 17 Magazine, TeamPeople.com, and where you and I met at Martha Stewart, which when you and I met, there were still 5 published monthly magazines that we were putting out. You and I were both on the digital side. So just as we're going through, take us through a bit of that career journey experience. I want everyone to hear how, we're keeping our career, we're pivoting, we're getting information intentionally or unintentionally, and we're moving. So tell us.
Yeah. I mean, so like I said, I always knew I wanted to do that. When I was applying to college, I knew I wanted to major in journalism, high school newspaper, all of that. And I didn't know what colleges. I just said to my guidance counselor, what are the colleges that have magazine programs, magazine journalism? That's what I want to do. And there were a couple. And I was like, well, I want to go to the best one. And so that was Columbia, it was Syracuse, it was Northwestern, UNC Chapel Hill. Those are all of the names that I remember. And I was like, I think I want to go to the one in New York. So I picked Syracuse, top of my list, and I got into the Newhouse School. And so I majored in magazine journalism. Which was no easy feat. And I majored in magazine journalism. I loved Newhouse. I love my Newhouse experience. I love the network that I got. And it was because of that network that I actually got my first internship. There was a woman named Judith Dobrinsky, who I'm still in touch with, who was at Business Week magazine at the time. And she called the school up, the alumni resource center, and she said, I need an intern. And the other fun fact about me, all the nerdiness is coming out, but I would spend literally all my afternoons after class in the alumni resource center, like looking for internships, looking for jobs. Like they literally got to know me. They would be like, Heather, since you're going to be here, can you file these things for us? I was like, no problem. That
tells us a lot about your orientation, meaning you were enjoying your Newhouse experience, but at the same point, you were already starting to plan for, so where are we going from here?
Yeah, 100%. And I still
advanced for a 20-something at, early.
I love that you call it advanced instead of nerdy. But yes, absolutely. I was advanced. I remember the woman who ran it was Lynn Vanderhook, in touch with her still. She's amazing. And I would be like, okay, how do I write a cover letter? How do I put my resume together? I was just on it, ended up getting this job at Business Week magazine, this internship at Business Week magazine. And I love Judith Dobrinsky because she did something that I'll never forget. They had a formal internship program at Business Week, and she was like, I'm not going to put you in that. She was like, they do too many things that are not journalism. She's like, they're going to teach you a lot of things, take you on field trips. I need you to start writing articles. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe what she was saying. So I literally, in that internship, I started reporting. I interviewed Kenneth Cole.
Well, you're like 19 or 20 years old. And
19 years old. I was like, I don't think she realizes that I don't know what I'm doing. But I grabbed that notepad and I went and interviewed Kenneth Cole, and I interviewed these executives at Avon and at at Reynolds, all of these places. She was like, you know what to do. She's like, you got it. Just go. And here's the story. This is what it's about. And I ended up getting actual bylines that summer where the internship program kids did not. Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you
Thank
for
you, Judith
rising up others. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was honestly one of the early examples, her and Lynn Vanderhook, one of the early examples that I had outside of my family of women helping women. And changing the rules to do it. Like what I love about what Judith did was she said, I've seen that internship program that we have here. It's not great. I'm going to show them what a good internship looks like, and we're going to change the rules that way. And that was the first example of that I saw.
Wow. I mean, just again, and also I think for many of us, especially as women being in business, sometimes when we change the rules, it's best that we don't ask for permission. We just do it.
100%.
We can ask for apologies, as the saying goes, if we need to, but don't ask for permission because we'll often be told no. So just do it. And
just do it.
This was an amazing experience, both for her as a leader and for you as a student.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So business week. After that, I had bylines before I graduated. This is also a great lesson learned here. So after college, graduated, and I was like, oh my God, I have bylines in national magazines. I'll look for a job at the end of the summer. Graduated, had a great summer, and then I was like, let me go look for a job. Could not find a job. Could not find a single opportunity. I called Judith back and I was like, I can't find a job. She's like, why are you just now looking for a job? I took my sort of scolding, and she said, I'm going to call a friend of mine who's just started, is managing editor at this magazine called Entertainment Weekly. It's a new magazine. Sounds great. And I think he needs interns. And I was like, interns? Oh, ended up taking it for, I think, no pay, if I can recall. Just experience, which I needed. And I was like, fine, I'll take it. So I went home to live with my parents. I got this internship, which eventually turned into a job, editorial assistant job, working for some pretty amazing editors at the time. And Entertainment Weekly was really new and fun and exciting. And yeah, it was great. It was a fun time.
So for anyone listening who may not be familiar with Entertainment Weekly because they've had the luxury of getting all of their entertainment information through the internet or through Instagram, tell them why Entertainment Weekly was so progressive at the time.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was like, so even if you're not familiar with it and you're a more digital person, People magazine, Entertainment Weekly was another timing publication. And I used to think of it as like People's younger, cooler little sister, right? We got to cover better stuff, cooler stuff in really funny, humorous, thoughtful ways. And the writing was incredibly top notch. The photography was beautiful. It was just, it was like a weekly digest or a weekly magazine, but for all the stuff you love.
So then from there, you went to, was 17 owned by Hearst at that point, or was it elsewhere?
Yeah, so before 17, it's interesting that I have several friends people that I'm still friends with. We all started, we call ourselves the class of 19. I won't say, but we all started at Time Inc. at the same time. Some at Money, some at Time, some at Fortune and Forbes, and all Black women who are all wildly successful now. And we were just talking about this recently because I posted something on LinkedIn, a picture of me on assignment at Entertainment Weekly, and I was interviewing James Earl Jones on the set of a TV show. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. But that was Entertainment Weekly. Like you'd walk in and they would be like, Heather, we need you to go to the new Woodstock. And it's like, that's the kind of thing that happened when you came in on a regular day. So I'm on set, I'm interviewing James Earl Jones, and someone snapped a picture. And I found that picture recently and posted it on LinkedIn. And some of my friends who started with me that same time, we were like, oh my God, Time Inc. was a crazy place back then. And it was pretty treacherous and very difficult to be a Black woman in that organization. You were definitely, we joke about it that there was basically one or two Black people at each magazine, no more than that. And if one Black person left, they would be like, okay, we can get another one. Of course, it wasn't that intentional, but it seemed that intentional. We would have lunch together and be like, why are we the only 5 or 6 Black people at these magazines? And that was my introduction to the bias that exists in media.
Yeah.
And it was really apparent to us and didn't seem to be apparent to other people.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So how did you navigate that? Or how did you, as a group of women, I don't know if you navigated it together or felt more like an individual experience. How did you navigate that?
No, that's exactly it. That we navigated it together. We would meet for lunch in the, timing cafeteria as often as we could, twice a week. We would find out about opportunities, share information that we had. At one point, they had an editor sharing program. And one of the women that I'm talking about, her name is Joyce Davis. She was at Fortune, and that's how I got to meet her and work with her. She became a part of that program. It was just a matter of banding together and sticking together and sharing not just opportunities, but the stuff that happened to us. Can you believe I got passed over for this? Can you believe I proposed this whole thing and it was a great idea and they loved it and then they gave it to so-and-so? We just would have to have each other's back and just be like, yep, I get it. It's not in your head. That actually happened, but we're going to keep going anyway. Until you realized either I'm going to keep going and I'm going to make it at this magazine. And some of them, Kelly Smith Killian, who's my chief content officer now, she was at Money. She literally graduated from Berkeley with an Ivy League degree and was hired as a receptionist and had to spend too long as a receptionist before selling herself to get the lowest job on the totem pole. She worked her way up at Money Magazine. She stayed. I chose to leave. So I realized I wanted to be on the editing track. And I got put in what was called at the time, the fact-checking pool. They changed the title later to researchers and reporters, but fact-checking. So fact-checking the facts in someone else's story, which is really important work. It taught me to be a better reporter. Yeah. But very dead end.
Yeah.
And the only thing you learn from continually fact checking is how to be a better fact checker. Right. I wanted to learn to be an editor, and there was literally no opportunity for me to do that there. No one could see it. No one could help me. I don't know. I don't know what the conversations were, but they were put her over here in the fact checking pool. This one over here will promote to writer editor. So it became apparent to me that if I wanted editing experience, I was going to have to leave and get it elsewhere, which I did. And I went to BET. BET at the time owned several magazines. One of them was a magazine called YSB, which stood for Young Sisters and Brothers. And I had been freelance writing for them. As a writer, you always have your main job and you're always freelance writing. And so I called up that editor and I was like, do you have any opportunities? And she was like, yes, in fact, we do. Interviewed and I took a job down in DC, which lasted 1 year before the magazine folded, which happened, from time to time back in the day. But I learned to edit, and I learned to edit from some of the best editors in the business at BET for that magazine. There was also a magazine called Emerge at the time, and I got to work with Black editors. And it was the best education I could have gotten because they knew what I needed to learn. They knew how to teach me. They took me under their wing. I got to do bigger, better stories. And it only lasted 1 year, but that's all I needed.
Right. Right.
Went out of business and I came back to New York, and that's when I got the job at 17 magazine.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate you taking me through, and not just because, I was asking you about 17, knowing about that whole middle part of the experience. And just being in that scenario. I mean, it's so... as a white woman who hears that, who definitely had my struggles professionally, but never because of the color of my skin. So I just want to really pause and honor that and know that, my privilege got me different opportunities than yours. And while we both had to manage our careers, there was much different challenges for you. And that makes me wonder, how did you keep your mindset so determined, focused, and positive? Like, I met you again, I don't remember how many years ago, 15 more years ago. Mm-hmm. And you have always just been like this force, like fierce, right? But approachable and lovely and like, fun and witty. And like, how did you keep that all possible when your day-to-day experience was vastly different than mine?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I to be honest with you didn't ponder very much until, recent years. When you're a Black person in a predominantly white setting, you've been prepared for it by your family and your community,
Mm.
right? And in my case, I've been practicing it since I was in grade school. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, but the schools were all predominantly white. So we had those experiences from the time I was literally in kindergarten, right? So I'm always one of two Black children in class. I'm always one of two Black children in this club and that club and whatever it is, however you're maneuvering. So you get that practice. By the time I got to the working world, I knew what to do, which is whatever they're saying about you is not true.
Yeah.
Whatever they're telling you can't do, that's not true either. You're smart. You graduated from Syracuse University with a degree from the Newhouse School. You have bylines. You are good.
Yeah.
You have to tell yourself those things every day, because when you step outside of your home, outside of your community, there are going to be people who are telling you the opposite every day. And they're not going to come up to your face and say, you're not that good. Some of them might. And we have those stories too, where literally editors would say that, have said that to me. I write 100 words. It comes back to me. Every single one of them's been changed. But sometimes they say it subtly, right? Passing you over for assignments, passing you over for opportunities. And you kind of sit there like, wait, did that just happen? Did someone just say that to me? Did someone just use that word in a meeting? You kind of like, there's that moment where you're like, am I crazy? Nope, not crazy. That actually happened. And you either put your big girl panties on and you stick it out, or you leave and you go find other opportunities in other places, which I've done both. There have been times when I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stick it out.
Yep.
That person's whatever they are has nothing to do with me. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go find other opportunities that are worthy of my talent and worthy of my experience. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's not traumatic, because it is.
Yeah.
But you have to figure out the survival of it, right? My parents sacrificed to send me to school. Giving up was not an option.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's really powerful. So then there must have been a pivot somewhere in there that, again, we talked about going then to Martha. And then there must have been a pivot that really, I'm going to say that maybe was about you going out on your own. Was that what your mindset was, of like, okay, I'm going to do it my own way? Or take us through what happened then.
I think the first one pivot probably was in deciding that if I wasn't going to get put on an editing track at Time Inc. through their system, which was very, very layered. There were many, many editors back in the heyday of magazines, many layers before you got to be managing editor or editor-in-chief. And if I wasn't going to get put on that track, and it took people years, like 20 years, and I was all for it. I was like, yep, this is how it works. This is what you do. Put me on that track. I couldn't even get on the track. And so I literally said, if I'm going to learn to be an editor, someone else is going to have to teach me to do it. I got to go find that opportunity. So that probably, and that was going from a big company, a big magazine where everybody knows the name of the magazine, to a very, very small one. That was probably the first pivot. That was at BET. That was YSB Magazine. The second one was probably digital, when the internet happened, right? So I went to 17 Magazine. I was an editor there. And then there was opportunities to write for the website. And it was all new. And, they didn't treat website writers and web editors very kindly. We were literally put in like the back of the office. Like, you can sit in this closet and talk your web talk and don't bother anybody.
Which happened. I mean, I will never forget that we had a rotation. We weren't in the main Martha building. We were on the Martha building on 42nd Street, right? Which was more of the sales building, because it was the location to get out to the subway and go and meet various clients. And I was in an office with no windows, and very often the overhead light was either flickering or not on at all. And I'm, there as, I was through a marketing and a strategy lens, but I'm there, doing my work. And I noticed there's all of these workmen outside my door, but they're staring into my office. And I'm like, hi. And they said, what are you doing in here? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm at my desk, I got my little cork board, I'm working. And they said, we made it clear that no young women should ever step foot in this room. And I was like, what? It turns out I'm next to the electric current and they're like, fertility reasons, you're not supposed to be here. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I also, what is happening here right now? So digital was often,
digital. That was the start of digital. Yeah, 100%.
HR got me out of that room so fast after that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it was like to be like a web writer or in charge of the web from the editorial side or the sales side, apparently, when this all started. But that's when I started, dabbling in web writing. We had a web editor and I was like, can I write some stuff for you? And she was like, yeah. And then, it's funny because during that time when web was taking off, they wanted editors who had experience in youth media, writing for young girls in particular. So 17 editors were getting plucked like crazy. So from there, I took my first digital job, managing editor of a small website that was later purchased by AOL. And then I went to teenpeople.com, which was great. So back to Time Inc., but in a different capacity as a managing editor of the website. And that year at Teen People, it was interesting because print sales were struggling so much, but digital ad sales were going crazy. And we couldn't create content fast enough for the sales team on the digital side. So it was really that was my maybe second or third pivot where I was like, I'm all in on this web stuff. I know how to build websites. I figured it out. I understand information architecture. I can build it. I know how to look at audience behavior and create content that they like. That was the beginning of sort of that experience for me, and probably one of the more important pivots that I made away from print journalism to digital.
Yeah. So you've now accumulated all these amazing skills, and then was it a conscious decision to go out onto your own, or was it, let's see which pops first? Like, let's see how this path navigates and how it plays out.
Yeah, it was a conscious decision when I made it. I had a few experiences after Teen People. I went to Martha Stewart. That's where we met, managing editor of the website. And then my husband and I relocated from New York City to North Carolina. The kids were small at that time. We wanted to get out of the city, kind of slow it down. And I have family down here. And so we moved to outside of Charlotte. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just find a media job when I get here. And I couldn't. There were no media jobs here when we got here in 2007. But I continued to freelance for Martha and some other places. And I ended up working remotely, right, at that time, which was really unheard of and frowned upon, right? So I worked out a deal with an agency in Greensboro, a content marketing agency, because they needed journalists who understood digital. And I said, I can't commute. It's too far, but I can work for you from here and I'll just be available as a consultant. And so I worked remotely for 7 years without a single Zoom call, without a single video conference, mind you. I just want to say that. I know I sound very get off my lawn right now, but I want to tell you, I did it. For 7 years, I helped them build, content marketing programs remotely. And I worked my way from consultant to SVP ECD, running the creative team, which was great. There was over 100 of them all across the country. And I just came to the realization, there was a change in leadership, which helped me come to the realization that my work here was done. I have nowhere else to go. I don't own this agency. Someone else does. And I'm also tired of building equity in something that's not mine. So that was a conscious decision. That's when I decided to leave.
Wow. Okay. So then take us through, you and your husband own your own business today.
Yes.
Give us a little bit of an understanding about what you're doing today.
Yeah, we're a branded content and video production firm, which means we create cool stuff for companies, for brands that need content, from websites to thought leadership, white papers, articles, social media content, and video. And what we love about that is my husband's a journalist also. We get to use our journalism skills to do this work. So we're still getting up every day doing the work that we love, right? Creating content, writing, interviewing people, one of my favorite things in the world. Still able to do that. And we're doing it for brands who need to communicate with their audiences. And we're small, we're not in a position to, pick and choose too much, but we're really lucky enough to be able to do work that's meaningful to us. Most recently, we've gotten into a lot of DEI and B work, which is so good, so much fun. And it allows us to marry all of our passions into one thing.
Yeah, I want to go into the DEI&B work, but I also want to ask you, you've always been this thought leader in journalism and content. How did you evolve then your journalism skills to branded content to know that this was the next thing for you?
Yeah, it's something that I didn't think would happen. When I was in college and you're training, they teach you journalism's over here, advertising's over here. Even in magazines back in the day, the editorial team was kept separate from the advertising team, right? You weren't allowed to mingle. The pages weren't allowed to mingle. And so blah, 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 fast forward, the internet changes all that. And now we need each other. But realizing that was so much fun for me, because when we started going into these clients who needed content, I realized that the reason they struggled so much to have meaningful content on their social channels and their websites were so bad is because there were no editors, no content creators creating that work. And it solidified for me that in order to write something really engaging or humorous or compelling, you have to have talent and skill, right? Mm-hmm. It's not enough to have the skill to be really good at grammar and be able to string sentences together, but you have to have the talent to engage people. Not everybody has it. And a little bit of creativity thrown in there makes you even more valuable. So what these marketers realize at these brands is that cannot have marketing managers creating this content. They have a different skill set. They do something else. We need content creators creating this content because they get people to engage. And that was what I needed to sell myself, right? And so going in, and I've done this for years and years, going into these brands and doing workshops and telling people, you're not going to be a great content creator. You have to figure out how to get great content creators. It's not your skill set. It's not what you do. But you're smart enough to realize that I need those people to help me engage my audiences, and that's where we come in.
Wow. So really leveraging that and understanding that a marketer is going to add an interesting spin to it and can work in conjunction with the editor/content creator, but that it's going to be very rare that the marketer is going to be the content creator. Meaning
100%. Yeah.
It's the storytelling aspect, which of course helps us, inspire, engage, create really great brand stories and bring that together. So then what I would say is tying those two together and thinking about the DEI&B work. Mm-hmm. How has supplier diversity in advertising and marketing shaped the way that you approach partnerships?
Yeah. So founding the agency, I didn't realize that there was such a thing as supplier diversity. To be honest with you, when we started, I thought, okay, we're going to use our network and we're going to do what we need to do. Then I realized that, okay, there's advocacy built in here through this department called supplier diversity, where it is someone's job or a team of people's job to identify vendors like us who are certified diverse-owned businesses and bring them into the fold. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Okay, let's do this. Here we go. And of course, after George Floyd was murdered, these teams, these offices became critically important. We joke about the early web teams being kept in the basement and in the back of the office. Supplier diversity teams were there as well, right? There was very often very little mandatory structure around the use of supplier diversity to get business done. After George Floyd was murdered, that changed. So a lot of these companies realize that they have to work differently with their supplier diversity teams and their procurement teams. All great. I started to realize as a marketing firm that we have another challenge, certified businesses. And that is that oftentimes advertising and marketing sits outside of supplier diversity. So advertising and marketing often sits with brand, and I use air quotes, or corporate. And that means that the organization is not obligated to use a diverse supplier for advertising and marketing. No one's going to make you do it. So that leaves room for the big guys. And we know there's only, 3 holding companies in advertising. They own all the other advertising firms. And that keeps the same system in place. It keeps the status quo intact. And it ensures, even today, that there will never be diversity in your advertising and marketing. It's a failure of the system. And every time I get a chance to talk about it, I talk about it. Since starting the business, I've been on all kinds of webinars. Supplier diversity teams will often organize these webinars, and they'll do an all call for vendors to join. And this is how you do business with us. I listen. The presentations are great. I have the same question for every presentation. I ask it at the end, and it stumps every single person. I have a question. Does advertising and marketing sit inside supplier diversity or outside supplier diversity? And I get a lot of humana. It's a problem. We need to fix it. We need to connect with our marketing partners. We need them to understand. And so far, what I've seen is very little change.
I think also, just to pull up the conversation to where we're going with this, is when George Floyd was murdered, up until then, we were already in the pandemic, as you all remember.
Yeah.
So all extraneous positions were canceled and pulled back. So all of the DEI&B positions, all of the head of diversity roles, or various levels within diversity, all of that was put on hold in 2020. Then George Floyd is murdered, and suddenly we have consciousness back again, and we're like, oh. And then you see the rush of putting all of these positions back in. I mean, the rest of that summer into early fall, the volume, I don't know how many were actually hired versus posted, but the volume of those positions being posted was really, for me, and this is where I sit in the industry, was really, really inspiring. That I was like, is this the moment? Are we finally now going to start doing this? Which, of course, we know putting a few people, diversity is not a person, right? It's a culture. So putting a few people in place doesn't change the situation within the agency or the company or the supplier diversity within advertising and marketing. So that's what you're really talking about, is that, yes, we may have hired someone in a DEI&B position, and perhaps they report directly to the CEO, or they sit within the head of growth, and they sit within HR in some way, but it's not actually cascaded through the entire organization, and there is not a process to change it. So where you're sitting, how are you approaching partnerships now? Like, how do you go about this, knowing that it's a personal goal of yours? I mean, mine too, but it's a personal goal of yours to start to change the situation.
Listen, systemic racism requires systemic change. And if you as an organization are not doing that, then you're only doing a part of the work. It's lipstick on a pig. You can hire all of the diverse people, people from diverse groups, you can hire all of them that you want. But if your systems are the same, you're going to struggle. And there are a lot of organizations right now who are struggling, and they can't figure out why. And it's like my son, the great story, my son who's 17, he got a summer job helping a teacher do some landscaping work. The teacher was on crutches and couldn't do it. So he goes over and he helps him do some landscaping work. And I told him, I was like, you should wear long sleeves and long pants because the bugs are going to eat you alive. It's North Carolina. Bugs are going to eat you alive. He didn't. He wears shorts. He comes back covered in mosquito bites. And we put all this topical whatever on the bites, and it helped a little bit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness for other mothers. A friend of mine was over, and she was like, oh, no, you need oral medication for that. You can't just put topical treatments on that and expect it to go away. And I was like, duh, of course, I knew that. But I tell you that story because that's the type of treatment we need here. We need oral medication. We need it to get into the system, right? You cannot just put topical treatment on these problems and expect them to go away. Yes. That means you have to look at, well, why are we not getting more diverse vendors? Why are we not getting more diverse owned businesses into our marketing and communications fold? Well, they actually don't have to be a part of our supplier diversity program. Well, why not? Who said so? Who made that call? Why is that a thing? they should be accountable. And you wonder, people always say, it always amazes me when these giant brands make these missteps in their advertising, where they will say something offensive, show something offensive, a visual that's offensive, and everyone always says, "Oh my God, how'd that happen? My God, how'd that happen? Oh no, how did that happen?" Listen, no fewer than 100.
I was going to say, how does it happen not more often?
How does it happen not more often? Exactly. No fewer than 100 people saw that creative. No fewer. Probably 3 or 4 different agencies saw that creative. And I don't care how many 1 or 2 people here, or 1 or 2 Black or brown people here, or 1 or 2 Asian people here, Latinx people here. It's not enough. You have systemic problems.
Having
you don't have
one or 2 Black or brown people somewhere in the hierarchy. 1, it's not their labor to change it for everyone. And 2, depending on where they sit within the organization, there's a balance between correcting what needs to be corrected, and also, I would imagine, making sure that I'm now not ostracized and out of a job. Because
100%, 100%. And the other thing, your question was about how do I ensure it? I speak up, and I don't know if this is going to make us a successful business over time or a less successful business over time. I try not to burn bridges, but I will speak up. I will let people know when they are doing the wrong thing. Yeah. And I've done it. And sometimes I've done it and there's been change. For example, we had a great project with Kellogg, and I'm so super excited. We get this Kellogg project, giving me all the paperwork to set us up as a vendor. I get the contract from Kellogg, the MSA, and it is 110 pages long. And I was like, oh my God, this is not something I can or should sign myself. Yeah. I have to engage my attorney. I don't know if anybody knows this about attorneys, but they're expensive. Right. I was like, oh my God, this is going to cost me a fortune to have my attorney go through this contract. Even though it's Kellogg and I can't change a thing, it's just going to be a really ridiculous exercise. So I didn't sign it. I'm thinking through the problem. A couple days go by, a week goes by. The woman in procurement calls me and she said, we need your contract signed. And I said, hey, listen, your contract is rather lengthy. There are at least 70 pages in here that don't apply to me as a small, diverse-owned business of our size, really a micro business at the time. I can't sign it. It doesn't make sense for me to sign it. I said, it would cost me about $5,000 to $7,000 to have an attorney read this contract. And so now you're costing me money. And she said, I didn't realize. It was such a great exchange. She was like, I didn't realize that. I never thought about that. She said, let me see what I can do. She calls me back a couple of days later and she said, we have a shorter, an abridged contract for you to sign. It was 15 pages. And she's like, I think this will be more suitable for your business. I don't know if it existed already or if it's something they decided to do. But she said to me, she said, I was excited for you when I saw that there was a diverse-owned marketing agency. Yeah. We don't get very many of them. And I wanted to get you an MSA right away. Yeah. And I just gave you our standard. And I was like, I appreciate you. Thank you for that. But what you need to know is that contract would have cost me money. Yeah. That I don't have to spend right now. And she was like, noted. This is what systemic change looks like. Right? So diverse-owned groups and diverse communities have been locked out of the main economy. That is the problem here, right, in business. It's not that we don't get opportunity or we don't know how. It's that we have been locked out of the mainstream economy. And rules like that keep us locked out of the mainstream economy. Right. So every chance I get, I'm going to point that out, because if you really have a DEI&B initiative, then you're going to want to fix this with me.
Yeah, yeah. And a credit to this woman who acknowledged her the mistake within the system and then hustled quickly to get something different that was more suitable. So, you speaking up enabled her to say, oh my God, I totally messed up. Right. And then where she can move from there. I think it's a really powerful and great example of what we're talking about when we're talking about systemic racism and where it goes. So you've also talked a lot, you and I have talked about, the work that you're doing, creating equity through content. So tell listeners what that means and about the incredible work that you are doing.
Yeah, I'd love to. I can't go into specifics about one of our sort of key projects, but it's a billion-dollar organization, and they knew and know they have some work to do. And what I admire about the CEO is that he took his time, right? So there were a lot of very quick reactions after George Floyd. There were a lot of quick reactions after the first couple of reactions. People did a lot of things. I don't take any of those things for granted. None of the money donated, none of the people hired, none of the changes made. All of it is amazing. All of it is necessary. But this particular person decided, I need to wait and figure out what the best way forward is here. I'm going to look at what other organizations that are similar and some not so similar, see what they're doing so that we don't make any missteps, at least not in the beginning. And if we do make missteps, we can recover from them. So when it was time, we had conversations all along. When it was time, they called us in to create some of this content. And what we established immediately with them, which is what we like to do with all of our clients, is if you're working on DEI&B internally, the storytelling has to come from your people. It has to be them, their voices as much as possible. That's a scary prospect for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? I've worked for a lot of brands in the past who have not wanted their employees to talk at all. So you got to be very sure of yourself when you say, I'm okay with that. Or if you're unsure of yourself, you have to be willing to listen. And they were willing to listen, so I give them credit for that. And we created some internal video work for them where employee voices get to be heard. And we've heard every type of story from my accent is so thick that I don't talk because I'm always afraid that I won't be understood or that people will get frustrated with me. I know that I'm intelligent, highly educated, but my accent is a barrier in that way. I've heard people in this project talk about their gender identity being confused and that being a problem when they pick up the phone. And these are stories that the leadership themselves had not heard. So we did some work that was really great, really powerful, internal video work for the senior leadership team only, because that's where it needed to start.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I just loved doing it. I love that that's the approach that he took. It starts with me. Mm-hmm. And after me, it's this leadership team. Mm-hmm. And they need to listen. And once we're finished there, we've got a good footing there, we're going to go all the way down throughout the organization. And I think it's been brilliant tonight. I love that we get to create that type of content. Some of it is print-based or text-based work, but a lot of it, an awful lot of it is video and audio work. And I think that's important for people to know when they're doing DEI work, because there's nothing more powerful than a person's voice. Even if you don't see them talking, I think audio in this case is an even more powerful tool because you're forced to listen.
It's the story
right?
then that you have pictures in your head that come up with that.
Right.
So what I hear you saying is that, DEI&B work, again, is not a goal. It's a culture. It's a systematic change. It is not something that we're checking off on our list of what are our OKRs this year and how many more percentage of X, Y, and Z did we hire or elevate, bring into the company or elevate. Yes, those are tactics within, but it's really about creating a culture that resides around support, openness, compassion, and diversity is also not a person. It is making sure that the group is representative of the whole. So I think that's a really important for us just to ground on, and that where you're seeing it in your work and then creating, I'm going to call it content or brand experiences, telling stories that also make sure that equity. Did I get that right? Or is there anything you add to that?
You did. The only thing I would add, the one thing the CEO says all the time is not terribly profound, but important, which is this is not going to be a check the box effort. If it ever feels like check the box, let me know. If it ever feels like check the box, then we're doing the wrong thing. And I just appreciate that. Everybody understands what you're saying and everybody can check themselves on that, right? And we've done some DEI work. We've been called and we've done work that has ended up being check the box work. And What I say to that is sometimes you get involved as a diverse owned business and you know full well that that's what you're getting hired to do, right? Mm-hmm. And as a small business, sometimes I have to take that work. I'm no less passionate about that work. I still have the same hopes and desires for our work when we put it out there in the world, that someone will see it and that it will resonate with somebody and it will inspire them to take some sort of action. That's my hope for every single thing we create. However, when you learn that you are part of someone's check the box exercise, how do I address that? How do I combat that? Often there's nothing I can do, but if I'm being used, then I'm going to use you too. And I make sure that I get every single ounce of promotion from that work that I can possibly get in every way and on every channel. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to use me, then I'm going to use you too. There's still an awful lot of that out there. And I think small and diverse owned businesses just have to be eyes wide open for that. It's not all the work, and some of it allows you to do, some of this DEI work allows you to do things that are really, really near and dear to your heart, that you're really passionate about. And that's what I love. That's what we get out of bed for in the morning. But yeah, every now and then there's something that's a little disingenuous. And that was one of the first questions they asked me. Oh, are you a certified diverse supplier? I was like, what's that? I don't think I am. And he explained it to me, and I was like, oh, okay. They were like, yeah, this is what it is. This is what it does. Here are a few that we often ask for. Look these up. I did, and I went for it, and I got certified. And I'm so appreciative of those moments. Of course, I didn't get the work with Meta, but they taught me something, and that's invaluable. And every time you get up and talk to somebody else and meet somebody else, you're learning something else. And that's how it kind of happens. You kind of, the road will rise up to meet you, right? If you take that.
You're scaling your brain in order to scale your business.
That's right.
A lot of it, there's some things that don't work for them. They get to a certain point in their career, and it's not about age, it's usually around mindset, that they're thinking, okay, am I doing this for the rest of my working years, or am I going to do something else? But then what happens often is they psych themselves out and think, well, I don't have skills here. My skills are only here. I can't do it. So my question then to you, Heather, is how did you know that all of your years of journalism and editing excellence, how did you know, or did you know, what you needed in order to go, one, out on your own, and two, to be successful? Like, how did you know it was the right thing for you?
That's a great question. I think, and it's so important that you said that it's really more about mindset than actual career opportunity or lack thereof. You sort of start looking at yourself like, for me, I was really busting my butt at this agency, right? Long nights, agency work is hard. It's around the clock. And I got to a point where I said, I am really doing a great job of building equity in someone else. Where is that going to leave me in 10, 15, 20 years? And the thought of where it might leave me was frightening to me, more frightening than staying in that role. And so even without knowing whether or not I could run a business, what I knew is someone would pay me for my talent. And I was going to try to keep as much of that money as I possibly could. Yeah. How can I do that? And I'll tell you a story really quickly. When I left the agency, my former boss called me and said, hey, I have another opportunity. If you're interested, we can, be incubated by this larger agency and set up a content marketing practice, and we'll be hired as full-time employees by this agency. It'll be great for you. And I was like, wow, that does sound really great. But I had already said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to start my own business. But I needed the money. So I said, okay, I'll do it. We had all of our meetings with the leadership team. They loved me. They said, great, here's your package. You're going to meet with the CFO and get everything all signed off. Meeting with the CFO, and literally I'm about to walk out of there. He said, do you have any questions? I said, yeah, I do have one question. I'd actually rather be paid as a 1099 than a W-2. And he kind of looked at me and he was like, well, why? I was like, listen, my husband has benefits. I don't need the benefits. I have an LLC, and I'd rather be paid to that LLC than to be a W-2. And he was like, okay, why? And I was like, oh my God, why? What's the answer? I'm tap dancing in my mind. And I said, Jill, I promise you, I was saying, I don't even know what I said. I said something about passion and creative projects. And, if I'm a W-2, I'll feel like I'm unable to do my creative passion work. And I really don't want to lose that. And if it's possible, I really would just love to be a 1099. And he was like, I don't care. There was no skin off his back. It's like, that's fine. I don't care. And what it did for me, though, and I did that work for 2 years, I was paid to write creative agency, and it enabled me to build equity in myself, actual equity. For 2 years in Write Creative, I had one client, and it was this agency.
Yeah.
And on paper, I looked amazing. And it's something that no one taught me. Yep. It was pure gut. Yep. I was like, honestly, the reason I did it is because I just said emotionally, I will feel better about what could be seen as a step backwards. If I just do this small tweak, just this small change will make me feel better, like I'm not getting sucked back into corporate.
Right. And at the same time, you're showing consistent, repeatable income going into your LLC and your business account, which is, to read between the lines, everyone, that's the genius of what Heather got.
Boom. There you go. And I don't know other than just saying it, how to share that information with people so that it's helpful. But what I can say to you is trust your gut. I just knew that was the right thing to do. I didn't learn it. Nobody taught me. I didn't read it in a book. I just trusted my gut because my goal was to build equity in myself from that point forward. Mm-hmm. Once I left corporate, it's like, you're not going to build another company for someone else. If you're going to build a company, you're going to build it for yourself. That's the education that I had.
Amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it just brings me so much joy. I love seeing people succeed, but when I see, a friend and someone who's also, in this case, a certified Black-owned business who is succeeding, we want more of that. We want more of those examples and to normalize it, right? So that it's not such a unique thing, that it's,
right.
You hear all different stats that there's less than 3% of dollars that go against, women-owned business. And of that, I think Black-owned business probably gets like 0.5% of that. So
correct. Right.
How are we telling stories and normalizing this? Mm-hmm. Amazing. And thank you for sharing that. So Heather, tell everyone, what is it that you're excited about? It's a 2-part question. I know that's terrible that I always do that, but 1, what is it excited about? And 2, where can they find you and follow your company's work?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity and this platform. And kudos to you, by the way, because the Career Refresh is amazing. And when I first saw it, I was like, that's it. That's the thing. That's how you frame it for people. So kudos to you. And thank you for having me on. Where can people see us? So writecreative.co. That's where that's our website, and you can see some of our work. You can follow us on all of the socials, on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and all of the places, and engage. Send us a note. Tell us where you heard about us. Tell us you heard me on the podcast, whatever you'd like to do. What am I most excited about coming up is, so we're a branded content and video production firm. We do a lot of great client work. We also have figured out a way to carve out space for our passion projects. And we have 2 or 3 passion projects on our roster that I am over the moon excited for. One is a project that my husband's doing called the Bison Project. He's a Howard alum, and he has spent the better part of the last decade as an investigative journalist, bringing to awareness the story of the Howard University men's soccer team and their 2 NCAA Division I titles in soccer in 1971 and 1974.
Oh, I just got chills.
I know. The story is amazing. I mean, honestly, there are Howard alums who don't know this story. There are Howard students who don't know this story. The very first Division I title to be won by an HBCU was won by Howard University in 1971, and it was the men's soccer team. And there is this incredible story of how bias and discrimination came into play, and the title was stripped away from them. And the story that Mark is telling in his podcast, The Bison Project, is the story of the stripping away of that title, the first college to ever have a title stripped away, by the way, and how they won it back, won the championship back. It's a phenomenal story. I'm excited that we can't talk about who, but it is going to be on a major platform and everyone will be able to hear it. So this is not branded content, right? This is just us using our skill and our storytelling ability to find what Mark calls untold stories and bring them to light. And there are millions of them, millions upon millions. And once we find them, the ones that resonate with us, we get really excited about making those stories and bringing them to life. We have another one. We have a young director on our team named Mel Page, and her passion project is a docuseries called Can't Retire From This. And it is about the passion of women's basketball, particularly in the DMV area, but all over the country, and how girls have this passion for play and for sport, and how that comes to fruition in their lives, and the amazing things these women have done after playing. She's interviewed over 60 high school, college, WNBA players for this work, and it's phenomenal. It's the most fun work I've seen in a long time. So we're super excited about bringing that to fruition. Just things like that. That's what keeps us going. I love the branded content work. I do love it. I love my clients. But the fact that we've built this framework, that we are able to fund our passion projects in this way, is really, I think, the biggest success of Wright Creative.
Amazing. And I'm going to put all the links to that, what we can share at this point in the show.
Absolutely, please.
So that people can look at that. Businesses. I think it's really important that we keep talking about it. We elevate the conversation. We let people know what's possible so that they can also for themselves dream what's possible. So I thank you for that. It's been really good to have you here.
And what you're not going to do is make me cry, Jill, but thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's been really great. I love catching up with you this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for listening to the Career Refresh podcast. If you're enjoying this and you want more information, go to my website, jillgriffincoaching.com. There you can find information on how to work with me one-on-one, or my group programs, or even bring me into your workplace. I'll put the link to my website in the show notes. But hey, listen, before you go, do me a favor, rate and review this podcast, because it definitely helps me get the word out to people everywhere so that they can also thrive in the workplace. All right, friends, I appreciate you. I'll see you soon.